Today we're going to do a really easy 3-step perspective tutorial. We're going to do a really simple little drawing, and I'll do it, really lay it out so you can really see how it works, to give you a bit of a sense of how we can do perspective without going too engrossed in any of the little minutiae. We don't want to get too engrossed in any of the little details or the sort of geometry. This is just how we sort of can do it by eye when we're sitting on the street. Okay, so yeah, should be a fun one, this. So stage 1 is define the planes. This sounds vaguely aeronautical, but it's not. It's like the sides of a box. So I guess it should be sides of a box, but you know me, I'm great at coming up with titles. So in this case, what we've got is a house, and then there's another house next to it, like that, and then this side, which we can just see. The rest of it is kind of stuff. Now, what planes do you have? Well, you have a gable end that faces this way, which is this bit here, and then you have a gable end up there that faces that way, that has those chimneys on, and the other plane is this one here that goes that way. So defining your planes, so this is the front of the house here, front, and this is, I guess, the side. And that one, you could say that's the side as well, or the gable end if you're being very nerdy. So the reason why we do this is so that we can decide in what plane to put the perspective in. So in what plane is perspective most important? Now, because we see most of the front of this, that's really the story here, isn't it? So primarily we're focusing on the 1-point perspective that applies to the front of the houses. Now, let me just talk to you very, very briefly about how perspective works. This is a super simplified version. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a point there. And then what I'm going to do is define, so this is your vanishing point. So that's VP, not Vice President. She's gone. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a vertical line there. And that is the far wall of a building. So then all the horizontal lines end up at that vanishing point. So therefore we can say, oh, there's some houses on this street that go down here like that. And there's a little door and some windows. Little front door, some windows, little Mr. Men houses. And the tops of the doors, actually, they will apply to the vanishing point, and the bottom of the windows, they will all go to the vanishing point. So all the horizontal lines, essentially. Now, imagine that we could see a tiny bit of roof there. Now, that would have its own vanishing point, like that. So that's how single-point perspective works when we look down the street. Now, say, for example, how perspective would work if we had a box on its own in the middle of nowhere. Again, we have a horizon line, and on that we can have, instead of having a single point perspective there, single point, we can have a double point or a 2-point perspective. So we'll go. So stage 2 is measure the perspective. Now, I think that sounds slightly metaphorical, like always question your own perspective or some such bobbins. Right, so how are we going to measure our perspective? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this. So this is going to be a demo, and I'm going to talk you through how applying the stages 1, 2, 3 when you're drawing something like this, either in the street or whether you're doing it in the privacy of your own bedroom or in the sauna or in the Baltic Sea or in orbit with Steve. We're going to do it theoretically on a box. So there's our horizon line. Right, so where's the vanishing point? Well, that's easy. Let's look at what we know about the front plane. We know we've got a horizontal line here. If we stood in front of the building, that would appear horizontal, even though because of perspective, because the angle, it looks like it's going downhill. So what we can do is we can take this line, we only need 2 lines, and we can extend that. So we can extend that out here, And then we take that line and then we extend that. Your vanishing point would end up about here. So when you're drawing, you can either eyeball that, which I do most of the time. I don't do, measure with a ruler. Or you can actually tie a piece of string here and use that piece of string to get your angles if you're working on a tabletop. But what the most common way is, what you do is you use this technique to get your top line, and then you use this technique to get your bottom line. And then as you vary between those 2 points, putting in the horizontals, you sort of eyeball it. So say, for example, I've got rows of, let's say, three lots of windows. So I'm going to I'm just going to draw in those 3 lots of 3, and then down here we have a one big window. So these perspective lines in the middle, now I could trace that down to roughly where my cup is, which you can't see. Let's bring that back into shot. So there. So yeah, hopefully you should better see that. So my cup's there, and that goes along the bottom there, but we know vaguely that's right. So halfway between those two is going to be, halfway between that point is going to be, I'm going to put an X. And then if we extrapolate that up, halfway between those 2 points, I'm going to put another X. You know that's roughly halfway. Now you can do the same again. You can extrapolate that to there, and that's going to be like that. So what I'm doing is I'm creating this fan that goes up like that. And that should generally enough to give you a sense of where you are in the drawing. So then I can put in these lintels. By measuring your perspective, what you're doing is you're taking a top and you're taking a bottom, and that will give you all the lines in between effectively. Now, so what we've done is we've defined the planes. We know which is the front and the side of the building. Stage 2 is we've measured the perspective. We've taken a line from the top and a line from the bottom. And that gives us all these lines in between, because we know every single one of those horizontal lines, that one, the tops of the windows, all the window frame components that are horizontal, the tops of the doors, this wall here. So all these horizontals will go to this vanishing point, which is going to be over here. Stage 3, think of a good name. Implication, actuation, just do it. Construction, applying the perspective. So before we get on with sketching this, we need to define the planes. So as I said before, it's the front plane we're dealing with here. So we're looking to figure out the perspective within this area here. So how do we define that? That's the second part. But then we have this other line here, whether it's the white line that defines the road, the pavement, or we could go off the wall. So there's our top line. Now that bottom line, I know how far up the page it kind of goes into that bottom corner, but it goes up about maybe a 1/6 or an 1/8 of that height. But I can apply it like that, maybe a tiny bit more. So that's our bottom line. So where do they meet? Well, what I'm going to do in this case is, instead of measuring it out and putting it on the table, I'm going to take a drawing pin and a piece of string, where that'll work for both, a little bit closer in. There we go. And our horizon line. So there's a horizon line, there's our top one, and there's our bottom one. So what I can do now is I can go back to the drawing and I can look at really where some of these verticals are. So the next thing I'm going to do, or I would do when I was sketching this, is I would look at some important verticals and I'd sketch them in. So this one is important, this one is important, and then really this one is important. The rest of them you can kind of fudge as you go in a way. So for the bottom of this wall, again, I can use this piece of cotton, top of the wall, same. And there's some details on there. There you go. So that's a bit of the wall done. Now the hedge, top of the hedge, assuming that's going to be flat, that's going to come up there. And again, I'm using the cotton line. So let's assume that all the verticals are vertical, and all we're really dealing with then to get the perspective in the front of the building is just using this cotton thread, really. So before we go on, rub out the pencil work and put a bit of paint on it. I just want to review how that's worked with this line. So we define the bottom edge, this bit, and then we know our eye line is roughly there. Then we define the top edge, and we use this same technique with this cotton line stuck with a drawing pin into where we've measured the vanishing point to be. And that's what gave us all our horizontals. Now it's not 100% accurate, like you can see there. I can get away with that by putting a lintel in. There you go. But it's not far off. Right, so let's get some painting on the go. Let's do something fun and quick for this one. Right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flip the shadows. I'm going to put the shadows on the side of the building. Now, at the moment, the shadows are on the front of the building. I'm going to flip it around. So let's look at these three areas. We've got this orange, we've got this yellow. So let's go straight in with a little bit of this. So natural sienna. So I'm using a nice big brush here. Not being too precious, as you can see. Now, there is a mixture of browns and lots of different things in there, so let's pick up a little bit of Van Dyke brown, elements of that. I mean, again, I'm not being too specific, I'm just adding them in generally. I might take a little bit of this transparent red oxide and suggest some chimneys without being too specific. Some of that orange might be quite fun in some other areas as well. So there's some really fun bits in here. Let's zoom in a bit and have a look. I really like some of the bits around this tree. That's really fun, the way that's mixed together. Some really fun bits up here, the way that this is mixed in. That shadow works really well just on that chimney. I love this sketchiness. And I really enjoyed doing that. That's really cool. And back to the other geezer. So I hope you enjoyed that. I thought it was quite an interesting little simplified demo. The painting, as you know, if you've watched any of my channel, painting is always an excuse to sort of be a bit loose and be a bit expressive and kind of throw the rule book out the window, because that's why you have a rule book, isn't it? So yeah, check out, there's loads of other videos here. Check them all out if you want to know more and want longer videos. Have a look at my Patreon. Please do like and subscribe. That helps the channel. But most importantly, enjoy your art, and I'll see you next time. See ya. Bye-bye.